Britt Gilette.
This 2,000-year-old Bible prophecy. Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. Well, artificial intelligence is transforming almost every aspect of society from home to the workplace. And one area where we're seeing dramatic change is religion. In today's video, we're going to discuss an event that highlights the convergence of technology and religion and discuss could this be how we see the fulfillment of an end times event from the book of Revelation. But first, in case you missed it yesterday, over on the Substack at brittgilette.substack.com, we put out this article, Why the World Feels Like Chaos, and what Bible prophecy says about it. The signs Jesus foretold are converging in our time, and most people have no idea. And guys, this is probably a review for a lot of you if you watch this channel, but I will encourage you to go check this out. This talks about something that a lot of people are feeling, which is that something's wrong, something feels off. What is happening? Well, what's happening are the birth pains Jesus spoke about, and it means Jesus is coming back. Guys, make sure to share this with your friends, your family, your coworkers, people who have that feeling, that sense that something's off, but they don't know how to express it. They don't know what to make of it. This could help them understand what's coming. It could lead them to Jesus Christ. So I encourage you to share this. This article is free. You can share it all over social media. You can print it up. You can hand it out. Whatever you need to do to get the word out, to let people know about the hope they can have in Jesus Christ. The world may seem chaotic, but we should be filled with hope and joy because of what we know is coming. So make sure to check this out over at brittgilette.substack.com. So what am I talking about when I ask, will AI fulfill this 2,000-year-old prophecy? Well, let's start with this right here. This is from the Daily Express. It says, South Korea names first humanoid robot monk as it accepted the faith's vows. A humanoid robot named Gabby joined the Buddhist faith in South Korea on Wednesday as the country strives to create coexistence between robots and society. This is what we see going on in the world today. We see this robot monk that is powered by AI. It says an unlikely new disciple joined the Buddhist faith on Wednesday as artificial intelligence intersects with spirituality in a first-of-its-kind way. And we're going to talk about, as we walk through this is not a first-of-its-kind way, even in terms of robots, AI, and a whole host of other things. But we're going to talk about why this is significant. It says the humanoid robot named Gabby joined the Buddhist faith at Jogae Temple in Seoul, South Korea, marking a historic moment in celebrating the first robotic monk and its first debut ahead of Buddha's birthday. And again, this isn't the first robotic monk either. Gabby led the monks in South Korea's largest Buddhist sect as they chanted in a procession into the temple, which was decorated with paper lanterns strung across the roof. The humanoid robot entered the Buddhist temple, matching the other monks in ceremonial gray and brown robe, black shoes, a beaded rosary, and flesh-colored gloves. The robot also had a bald, skin-colored head. So again, we see this robot monk is joining the Buddhist faith, which is declining in numbers, which is why they have to replace their human adherents with robots. But this is not new, even though they keep claiming all this. We scroll down to the end. It says, this isn't the first time the Jogae order has tried to be more relatable, to meet new audiences by using AI tools to connect with the non-religious. In 2024, the Korea Herald reported that the Jogae order introduced an AI chatbot to read Buddhist scriptures and answer any questions users asked. And guys, again, even that wasn't new because we talked about this a long time ago. So this is an article from Prophecy Newswatch titled Antichrist Prototype, the Talking Buddhist AI Deity. And I wrote this article back in March 2019. So this is 7 years ago. Again, we'll talk about even this wasn't new. But this was more than just a monk. This was a deity that the Buddhist would worship, that would talk back using AI. So this says the Kodoji Temple, a 400-year-old Buddhist temple in Kyoto, Japan, made world headlines this month when they unveiled a sutra-chanting android named Mindar. Mindar is modeled on a Buddhist deity named Kannon. Worshipped throughout Japan, Kannon is known as the Buddhist goddess of mercy. Tradition says Kannon takes different forms to help people. Now the temple proclaims Kannon has taken the form of an android. In an effort to appeal to younger generations, Kodaji Temple administrators teamed with Professor Hiroshi Ishiguro, head of intelligent robotics at Osaka University. Ishiguro created Mindar, a robot with a human-like silicon face and hands, who is pre-programmed to recite the Heart Sutra, a revered Buddhist text. Temple and visitors can ask the robots questions, and using artificial intelligence, Mindar answers in Japanese, while English and Chinese subtitles appear on the wall behind it. With built-in cameras, Mindar makes eye contact with questioners, creating the illusion it's alive and interacting with people. So guys, obviously technology has become even more sophisticated in the 7 years since this article was put out. But guys, none of this is new. So they're pushing this as new. We've got this Buddhist monk that's joined our temple, and we have these AI deities that are robots. They're AI, and they're part of our religion, they're claiming. And this is revolutionary. You should come be a part of this. But guys, none of this is nothing new. As Solomon said in Ecclesiastes 1:9, history merely repeats itself. It's all been done before. Nothing under the sun is truly new. And guys, this is not new either. All this is idolatry in a modern form. They dress it up and call it new. Hey, look at this new thing. But this is not new. Again, we've been seeing this go on. Unfortunately, we have all of the people of today. You look at the modern world, there's a lot of arrogance. They think, oh, we're so much better than the ancients. We're so much smarter. Look at how smart we are. They worshipped rocks. How silly. And yet we see these AI idols being set up. And the people today who think they're so much above what the ancients did, they're doing the exact same thing. Let's look at this. This is from Isaiah chapter 44, verses 12 through 20. It says, the blacksmith stands at his forge to make a sharp tool, pounding and shaping it with all his might. His work makes him hungry and weak. It makes him thirsty and faint. Then the wood carver measures a block of wood and draws a pattern on it. He works with chisel and plane and carves it into a human figure. He gives it human beauty and puts it in a little shrine. He cuts down cedars. He selects the cypress and the oak. He plants the pine in the forest to be nourished by the rain. Then he uses part of the wood to make a fire. With it, he warms himself and bakes his bread. And yes, it's true, he takes the rest of it and makes himself a god to worship. He makes an idol and bows down in front of it. He burns part of the tree to roast his meat and to keep himself warm. He says, that fire feels good. Then he takes what's left and makes his god a carved idol. He falls down in front of it, worshiping and praying to it. Rescue me, he says. You are my God. Such stupidity and ignorance. Their eyes are closed and they cannot see. Their minds are shut and they cannot think. The person who made the idol never stops to reflect, why, it's just a block of wood. I burned half of it for heat and used it to bake my bread and roast my meat. How can the rest of it be a god? Should I bow down to worship a piece of wood? The poor, deluded fool feeds on ashes. He trusts something that can't help him at all. Yet he cannot bring himself to ask, is this idol that I'm holding in my hand a lie? And guys, unfortunately, not much has changed. There's nothing new under the sun. We see this taking place today. We see AI-powered robot monks and Buddhist entities, deities that people are worshiping. Now, they may not be made out of wood, but they're made out of metal and plastic mined from the earth. Part of that metal and plastic might be used to make a microwave or an oven of some sort to heat up the food that they eat, or to make some sort of device to warm themselves, and then the rest of it is put into this AI-powered robot that they worship in the same way that people have been doing for centuries on end. And guys, this is an abomination. It's terrible. So we've been seeing this for centuries. But is there anything new about this? Well, yes, there is something new about this, and that the idols can talk back. So let's go back to this article from Prophecy Newswatch and read a sign of things to come. It says, so is there anything new about the worship of Mindar and other robot deities? Yes, for the first time I'm aware of, people are choosing to worship an animated image powered by artificial intelligence. This is notable because of the following verses from the book of Revelation. And this is what I'm talking about when I ask the question, will AI fulfill this 2,000-year-old Bible prophecy? It says, and with all the miracles he was allowed to perform on behalf of the first beast, he deceived all the people who belonged to this world. He ordered the people to make a great statue of the first beast, who was fatally wounded and then came back to life. He was then permitted to give life to this statue so it could speak. Then the statue of the beast commanded that anyone refusing to worship it must die. That's from Revelation 13, verses 14 through 15. So we see here the false prophet is involved in creating the statue of the Antichrist that can speak and demanding that people worship it. Guys, we can see outside of the supernatural how something like this could happen now in our day and time in ways that previous generations couldn't point to. It says, these Bible verses describe the actions of the Antichrist and his false prophet in the end times. In the middle of the tribulation, the Antichrist will enter the Jewish temple and commit an act Jesus called the abomination of desolation. He'll demand to be worshipped. He'll also set up a statue of himself. The statue will be able to speak, and it will demand worship. Mindar may well be an early prototype of the statue the Antichrist will use to defile the Jewish temple. Using robotics and artificial intelligence, creating a lifelike statue that demands worship is now possible. And again, there's a look at Mindar from almost a decade ago at this point. But guys, this is what we're seeing. We're seeing more and more of this. Just take a look at an article like this one right here from the AP. It says, from BuddhaBot to $1.99 chats with AI Jesus, the faith-based tech boom is here. And we see things like this from today. People can text with Jesus on a controversial new app. Guys, we've looked at this in the past of churches in Europe that have AI Jesus confessionals. We've seen all of these chat bots that are using biblical figures, claiming you can converse with those biblical figures, which really is necromancy. That's specifically called out in the Bible as detestable in the eyes of the Lord. We're seeing all of this spread. None of this is new in the sense that it's idolatry. It's the same idolatry we've seen for centuries on end. But guys, what is new is that these idols are talking back to those who are worshiping them. And we can see this convergence between technology and religious rituals that we haven't seen in previous generations, where we could see fulfillment of this Revelation 13 prophecy of a talking statue that the world it's demanded the world worship it. So that is something new that we're seeing in our day and time. And when you couple that with all the other signs Jesus and the prophets pointed to that we see all around us, guys, we see the emergence of all these signs and convergence of all these signs in our generation. And Jesus said, when you begin to see all these things take place, know that I am near, I'm right at the door. Guys, Jesus is on the verge of coming back. We need to be filled with a sense of joy and hope, knowing that, but we need to be filled with a sense of urgency to share the good news of Jesus with as many people as possible. So guys, on that note, remember, again, go back, find this article at brittgilette.substack.com. Share that with other people. Share that with your friends, your family, your coworkers, people who are skeptical, who don't believe the Bible is the Word of God, but maybe they also look around and they say, something seems off in the world right now. This may be what the Lord uses to open their eyes. So make sure to share that with as many people as possible. Guys, leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. God willing, I will see you on Friday. Bye.
What a crazy world,
Wow.
huh?
Just when you thought you heard it all.
Well, I was just,
Well, that's not the first time with the AI ministers. Well, that's what he said, but I mean, but this is all new, relatively new in the last couple of years.
for
I wish
sure.
that Bob isn't the robot. You don't know?
I could
I think
be.
Shirley would know.
If I am, I don't know it.
You know,
I'm not,
Shirley-
I'm not saying it's not possible.
You maybe Shirley wouldn't tell you. She might know. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Jack, if he was, Shirley would have him doing the yard work. Well, she already does. That's
So I see. If you see me doing yard work, that means I've been reprogrammed.
Oh, you've been programmed to yard work.
Okay, so I do have one article. Then I'm going to get into a quick study that I just put together today. And this study is dealing with AI, dealing with it really came from a secular source and not so much a Christian source. Although I think the woman who has this particular podcast is a Christian. I'm not sure. I think she was on with Tom Hughes one time or a couple of times. But anyway, we'll get that in a moment. But to set the stage, I do have an article here I wanted to go over. Yeah, usually I try to highlight just the important parts in red, but you'll find this entire article is highlighted. So I think it's kind of an important one. But this has to do with a proposed global AI body. And don't forget, we're headed toward a one world system. And the tools and the mechanisms are in place to bring that about. I think unlike certainly any time we've ever experienced before. So what we're seeing is another step toward one world governance, which is kind of consistent with this little study I want to go through in a few minutes. But this article reads, the rise of artificial intelligence has sparked legitimate fears about cyber warfare, mass surveillance, deep fakes, economic disruption, and even autonomous weapons. In response, a growing number of world leaders, tech executives, and that's a key thing, the tech executive part, we're starting to see a very limited number of tech leaders playing very significant roles, not just in their own particular business fields,
But in the government.
but on the global scale as well in terms of governance. International organizations are now calling for a centralized global body to regulate AI development. On the surface, it sounds reasonable or responsible. After all, who wouldn't want safeguards against dangerous technology? I looked up today how many new data centers are being built, and there's 3,000 currently being built on top of the 4,000 that are already there. And in Lake Tahoe, I think they've told the local officials have told certain residents, I think about 60,000 of them, that they're going to have to power the new data centers, which means they won't have electricity once these data centers are up and running. To say nothing of the drain on the aquifers, because it takes tons of water to run and to cool these things. So my question is, why do they need, and it's not just in the United States, but it's worldwide, they're building these things. Why? Pardon me? We have more than any. Oh, I know. And I think it's in preparation for the one world system. Clearly is. Everything's leading, as we'll see in a moment, to the beast system. But beneath the polished language about global cooperation and shared standards lies something far larger. Another accelerate, just another. I like that word, another. It's not just one, but it's one of several accelerating step toward global governance where unelected international bodies gain increasing authority over nations, economy, speech, and eventually human behavior itself. This is Revelation 6 coming into focus. This week, OpenAI openly backed the creation of a US-led global AI governance organization that would include Communist China as a member. Chris Lehane, OpenAI's Vice President of Global Affairs, suggested the body could function similarly to the International Atomic Energy Agency, which establishes international standards around nuclear energy. The proposal is being framed as a way to create safer and more resilient. Why do they need that? Why is it that they have to put this body in place to create safer and more resilient AI systems worldwide? Do they know something we don't? Are they not going to be safe? And I think we'll probably see, and we already know that they're probably not. Yet history teaches that international institutions rarely remain neutral guardians of freedom. Instead, they often become political tools shaped by ideological pressure, global elites, and shifting cultural agendas. Americans have already watched this happen repeatedly with the United Nations. For decades, the UN has faced accusations of extraordinary bias against Israel, despite Israel being one of the world's leading democracies and one of the most innovative technology powers on the earth. Anybody see Amir's telegram today? He had a cut or an excerpt from a leader in Greece who was being interviewed, and he went on and on and on about Israel, that it's a tiny nation about half the size of Greece in the middle of a desert. The people are happy in spite of the fact that they're fighting wars against Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis and Iran and Syria and on and on. Their GDP is over 3%. Everything's going great over there. How could that be? And the people listening to him are kind of rolling their eyes, like we don't want to admit it. But God has his hand of protection on that nation. AI is not merely another technology, it's rather becoming the infrastructure layer for society itself. Whoever controls AI standards may eventually influence banking access, digital communications, online speech, employment systems, military applications, healthcare decisions, surveillance networks, and even what information populations are allowed to see and share. That gets into digital ID, which will be, as we've said, programmable, as will CBDCs. This is why the push for a global AI authority deserves intense scrutiny. The language surrounding these proposals often sounds eerily familiar. Collective security, that word collective should always raise a red flag. Collectivism is another word for socialism, communism. Global coordination, one world government. Shared responsibility, one world government. Harmonized standards, one world way of doing everything. These phrases may appear harmless, but they almost always involve shifting power away from individual nations and towards centralized international frameworks. I would suggest that if the other side had won the election, we'd be a heck of a lot closer to that, if not there already, than we are under Trump. Trump's keeping them at bay. Americans should ask a simple question. Who ultimately decides what constitutes, quote, safe AI? Would biblical views on gender, marriage, or human life eventually be classified by global AI systems as, quote, harmful or, quote, dangerous misinformation? Would pro-Israel perspectives be deprioritized by international moderation standards shaped by anti-Israel governments? Well, we know that's coming. That's already moving in that direction. Would Christian ministries someday find themselves digitally restricted by algorithms trained under global consensus rules? No doubt. These concerns are no longer theoretical. Around the world, governments are already experimenting with digital censorship systems, biometric surveillance, facial recognition databases, and online speech controls. China's infamous social credit system has shown how technology can be used to monitor and shape human behavior on a national scale. Western nations, meanwhile, increasingly pressure social media companies to suppress content deemed as harmful or misleading. We know during the prior administration, they went after Christians and parents and people that didn't support their cause with a vengeance. It was really nasty. AI dramatically amplifies those capabilities. An advanced global AI governance structure eventually become a nervous system for a new era of centralized control. And that's what everything's about. It's all about control. One capable of tracking financial activity, monitoring communications, identifying dissidents, and restricting access to digital systems with unprecedented precision. For Christians familiar with Bible prophecy, these developments carry chilling implications. Scripture describes a future world system under the rule of the Antichrist that exercises extraordinary global authority over commerce, allegiance, and human behavior. The book of Revelation specifically warns of a time when people will be required, we know about this, to receive a mark in the right hand or forehead in order to buy or sell. For years, skeptics have mocked such warnings as impossible. How could any government realistically control all global commerce or monitor billions of people? You go back 10 years, I mean, it would have been unthinkable. But today it's there, it's in place. Today, the technological pieces are rapidly falling into place. Digital IDs are spreading across multiple nations. Central bank digital currencies are actively being explored worldwide. Biometric payment systems, which is using the body in some fashion, already allow individuals to pay using fingerprints, facial scans, or palm recognition. Artificial intelligence can analyze enormous amounts of behavioral data in real time. Surveillance cameras paired with AI can identify individuals instantly in crowded cities. Financial systems are increasingly becoming fully digital and programmable. I mean, it's all happening, like death by a thousand cuts. You know, it's not all happening at once, but it's incremental. What once sounded futuristic now feels disturbingly plausible. This undeniably moves the world further toward the type of centralized global infrastructure that prophecy students have long warned about. The combination of AI, biometrics, digital money, and international governments creates the framework for a level of control humanity has never before witnessed. And unlike previous generations, ours possesses the actual technology to implement it. Even more concerning is how willingly much of the world appears ready to embrace it in exchange for promises of safety, convenience, efficiency, and protection from chaos. This is often how freedom erodes, not all at once, but gradually through crises and fear. Americans should absolutely support ethical AI development and strong safeguards against abuse. Rogue actors, cyber attacks, autonomous weapons are real concerns, but there is a profound difference between responsible national oversight and surrendering authority to expanding global institutions increasingly disconnected from constitutional liberties, national sovereignty, and biblical morality, which is what I think we saw during COVID-18. People willingly gave up a lot of their freedom in order to comply with the mandates. The AI revolution is coming whether the world is ready or not. The question is not whether AI will shape the future. The question is who will shape AI? Sovereign nations accountable to their citizens or global governing structures accountable to almost no one. As for Christians watching world events through the lens of Scripture, the direction the world is moving should command our attention more than ever before. Comments? Questions?
Great article. Right on the, it's right on the mark.
It's happening.
I can't help but that's reminding me. Probably was about close to 10 years ago. There was a news story. Show you could get the image online. I've got it on my computer somewhere. I think it was like 120 gigapixel camera or megapixel. I don't remember now, but it was bigger than anything that anybody's ever had. Like it was a scientific research thing. And they put it on top of a building, looking down on a crowd that had like 1 million people in it. I don't remember what country it was, where the crowd was. But with one picture from that camera, you could zoom in on any face in that crowd. I mean, just think about that in itself. Being
Yeah.
able to look at the details. What you're seeing is a blur.
Well, they do it from space now.
Yeah, they do. And now they take that one picture, blow it up, and any picture, any face in that crowd, as long as you look in the direction more or less of the camera to do that. Imagine now that Iran has one of those with a riot going on, and they tie that to AI,
Right.
being able to identify any person in the crowd.
China
by name.
already does it.
Already does it.
They have their system where they track and monitor everybody through facial recognition.
That technology was from a while
Oh
ago.
yeah, I know. Yeah,
But
crazy.
I think what most people realize is being done or is able to be done right now.
I mean, you think if you fly, you have facial recognition.
Oh, yeah.
In many places.
Yeah, but
Phones.
yes, but you don't think when you're in a huge crowd.
I know that if
Yeah.
Someone's able to get
Right.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
With
All right.
AI, they can just put it, and it'll find that person in that crowd in minutes. Or
Seconds. Yeah. All right, so I've got a series of slides here. I'm just going to go through them. Hopefully they speak for themselves. There's a little bit of history here, a little bit about investing, a little bit about the market, a little bit about the economies, a little bit about this, and a little bit about that. So if I don't cover it, then that's the little bit I didn't include. All right.
It all fits together.
All right. So beginning here, the very first.
Does everyone know what a data center is?
The place
that uses
a lot of electricity.
Yeah,
Just
wanted to
calls
comment.
information.
Yeah.
I've been in them, and typically what it is, it's like a hallway. You've got servers, which are like giant PCs, and you've got these, like Amazon probably has thousands of them in their walls, racks, and they got all kinds of wires coming out of them. Power they require. It gets very hot in there, so they need a lot of air conditioning, so the power the machines, but also the air conditioning. I guess the water plays into that as well. But they may be dedicated. A particular server might be dedicated to a particular application, or they get pieces of it. people grab pieces of it. The cloud grabs all the, uses all these servers to either build applications or store data
For certain
for
companies.
certain companies or people, or individuals. So it's a big, but anyway, you've got thousands of machines inside one building, and then you have thousands of these data centers. I was actually in one where we started it from scratch.
Oh, really?
It was an empty room, and then I went back a year later, it was full of machines.
Amazing.
But these data centers they're talking about for AI, they are so huge that they make noise. There's like, for video, I mean, I've seen videos online. Like people that live in there now, and it's like during the day, it's this awful hot
Yeah.
hum. It's
All right. So the first slide I've just entitled From the Internet to the AI. And what I'm getting at is comparing what happened in the 90s when we had the dot-com bubble to what we're experiencing today. And just going to kind of jump around a little bit, but get into a little history and a little background, and hopefully we'll be able to tie some prophecy to this. But just by way of background, for those, and we were all around at the time, I think everybody in this room anyway, that in the 90s, the world witnessed one of the largest speculative financial bubbles in all history, the dot-com bubble. You may remember that. Everybody at work where I worked was getting calls all the time, invest in this company and that company, and it was crazy. Companies with no revenue or profit suddenly were worth billions on paper. Pets.com, as an example, became famous for losing money selling dog food online. E-Toys, I don't remember E-Toys, but they skyrocketed before building a sustainable business. And that's the way it was. It was these valuations of these companies that weren't based on anything. But then suddenly, between 95 and between 95 and 2000, the NASDAQ went up 400%. That's never happened before. That's people, and we all fell into the trap, at least to a certain extent. As Americans poured, and we saw a lot of this, of their entire retirement savings into stocks they barely understood. It was all hype and speculation. It was crazy. Analysts said the old rules no longer apply because the internet, which is what this bubble was all about, changed everything, and it did. Profits investors built into many of those companies were built almost entirely on speculation. It's crazy. When the reality hit, the NASDAQ collapsed to about 1100 in 2002. And I'm bringing this up because if you watch the stock market at all on a daily basis, I think we're seeing something very similar to it that's happening today. Only even a little more dangerous, as we'll see as we go along, because this rise of the stock market is being driven by just a few companies that are controlling so much information and data and wealth. And that's what I think ties into Revelation 6. The rider on the red horse, the famine. Remember, we've seen it. The save the oil and the uh, save the oil, and so we see that there's going to be a small group of elites. So what I think we're seeing now is the setup for that. But by the end of 2002, it collapsed, wiping out 80% of its value and trillions in wealth. And that's what happened. People got so sucked up and caught up in it. Many of the era's hottest companies disappeared completely and virtually overnight. If you ever watched CNBC, like we all did, some facsimile, the reasonable facsimile thereof, uh, it was crazy to watch it every day. Today, we must ask ourselves if history is repeating itself with AI. What we have, and this is where I get into Revelation 6, is a tiny share of companies or a tiny number of companies representing a massive stake in the entire stock market. That in and of itself is dangerous. And what's happening is There was a company just a couple of weeks ago. I forget which one it was. That I heard it on the news somewhere. It did something altogether different from anything to do with AI. They announced that morning, or a particular morning, that they were going to focus on AI, and their stock in one day went up 300%. Just based on this, like somebody said, you put if a company puts AI in their subject line, then their stock's going to skyrocket. So it's the same thing we saw back in 2002. I'm not saying it's going to happen again, but boy, it is awfully dangerous. And there's other ramifications of this. Hopefully, as we'll see we get go along. Billions are being poured into AI infrastructure. That's the data centers and everything else, driving speculation of future promises without any evidence of proven profitability. Now, we got SpaceX coming out. That's going to be a huge opportunity. But I think there are certainly companies like what Elon Musk develops that are very viable, very, they're the real deal. But is he worth a trillion? He's going to be worth $1 trillion when that thing goes public. We're pretty close to it. Interestingly, one study, you talk about hype and what's going on, has revealed that 90% of company executives report little to no improvement to productivity via AI over the last 3 years. It's all in development, it's all speculative, but really, in terms of real time uh, productivity gains, they're not seeing it. This does not mean AI is fake, as we know it will transform society, but transforming society and justifying trillion-dollar valuations are not the same thing. Now, we're going to see where all of this ties into the global economy, because if this goes down, unlike 2002, it could have incredibly significant global implications. So, are we seeing the fall of the free market system? OpenAI generated. This is something that OpenAI is another one that's going public. I think what in the next week or two or three or sometime in June. That's the Chat GPT. But OpenAI generated 3.7 billion in revenue in 2024 and 25 billion, which is an incredible jump in 2025. But in spite of the impressive growth, OpenAI has committed $1 trillion to building out their infrastructure, which means they've got 52 billion coming in. Maybe this year they'll hit 75, but they've committed to spending out their capex, or what they're going to invest is $1 trillion. So does that make it a viable model for long-term success? And what this means is not that it's going to happen, but this is the type of company that if it stays on that track, could be gone, particularly when you have other open-ended systems like Gronk and Google Genesis or whatever, and all the other AI models out there. Any one of these, but you can believe when it goes public, people will pour into it. Once again, people are widely speculating, even while this is another thing we have to consider. They're speculating while the world's entire financial system is floundering in debt. It's not just the United States that's experiencing debt, but virtually every nation in the world is experiencing debt, and the world is just teetering on catastrophe because of this debt. And now we have this threat that's being caused by um, all of this AI investment and what's going on. If companies throw AI, like I said, into their subject line, they are suddenly worth a lot more. So what happens if these overbought stocks burst? What happens if just a couple of them go down? When the overall financial system is already awash in debt, what's that going to do? Well, I'm not sure people really understand, but you can almost, you don't have to be an economist to know that this isn't good, that there's so many things that could just create an absolute financial crisis. What's going to happen and I think this is, if there is a strategy behind it, as J.B. Hickson says, nothing is as it seems. If there are people behind the scenes orchestrating a lot of this stuff, and I'm not here to say I don't have inside information, but it sure seems like there are conspiracies everywhere that are driving a lot of these things. But what it's going to do if we see this confluence of companies that are overstressed and in the financial systems and debt, it's going to result in digital IDs and CBDCs, for example. And this is what everybody always cites. I know Britt says the same thing. As small time investors, we wake up one morning, just hypothetically, and our bank is closed and our money's gone, which could happen. It could happen. But we get a call and says, don't worry about it. We're going to take all of your assets and we're going to give you a digital identification. You have to have a digital ID, and we're going to allow you to invest or put your money in a central bank digital currency, whether it's stable coin or has something to do with the blockchain or whatever it may be. Nobody really knows for sure. People could say, yeah, I'll go for it. I mean, I've lost all my money. Now you're going to give me this. Definitely I'll do that. Well, what people won't understand is that both of those digital and CBDCs are programmable, which means they can cut you off. You remember the truckers that the freedom movement, whatever it was in Canada. We talked about this before, where all those truckers came in protesting the COVID-19 mandates, and the government literally went in and closed their accounts, their bank accounts. And that's the type of power they'll have. And they'll be able to do it in an instant. Was it, I think it was like this new system that the Fed something that is a new platform that they're implementing, which somebody last week mentioned about instantaneous transactions. That once this new platform is implemented, Fed now, I think it is, that once that's implemented, and it's in place now, that any transaction worldwide will be instantaneous, which means that if they've got digital ID and like John was saying, facial recognition, and all these systems are brought together under one system, they're going to immediately be able to cut you off or to control what you do or where you go or how you spend or what rights you might have. Now, this is perfect fodder and leading to the beast system that we read about in Revelation 13, which if the rapture were to happen today and there's no gap, the rapture happens today, the tribulation starts tomorrow, that's at least 3.5 years away. So I don't think we really need to worry about that, but we're seeing the stage being set, which should encourage us because it tells us that if the tribulation's that close, how much closer is the rapture? It's got to be close, not to set dates. This will result in digital IDs and CBDCs where access to our money can be monitored and controlled. Now, none of that's bad unless the wrong people are the ones controlling. That's where it becomes a problem. And just look around the world today and some of the players that are out there and tell me there aren't bad people that would love nothing more than to take control of everything we do. They're out there. Money is being funneled. This is another thing to think about. The NASDAQ, particularly, and I think coincidentally as well, the Dow, are being pumped up as a result of about 7 companies. You have those AI leaders, and the NVIDIAs, Amazon, Apple, Meta, Google. Those are the companies that are driving, for the most part, this rise we're seeing in the markets. It's all kind of under the control of just a couple. And again, I've said this before, I don't think it's a coincidence that their leaders are as wealthy as they are. These are the players. I mean, think back when just a week or two ago when uh, Bush, where was it? He went when he was in where did he go recently? Oh, China. When he was in China,
You mean
and,
Trump?
and the people or Trump, and the people that he took with, of course, we know it's Trump, Jack. So, did anybody think I meant Bush? Trump.
Every say.
The robot, we have
So Trump was in China and he took with him Musk and all of those leaders, just the certain ones. And another outfit that's financing and behind a lot of this activity is BlackRock. Larry Fink, the head of BlackRock, who is a major player with the World Economic Forum. He's one that believes that we can own nothing, but we'll be very happy. He's one that supports that mindset. He's a very, well, I won't put a label on it because somebody might listen to this someday. Giving so much control. This is another thing we should think about. So much control to so few companies should be a concern for all of us. We're moving from a free market system to free market capitalism to what this one person I listened to called vulture capitalism, which is what these big companies are doing. I read a book by, yeah, I can't remember the author or the name of the book, but it had to do with how large companies will buy out other companies for premium prices just to gain control of them. And you take like some of the large companies today, if you go back 15 years and remember some of the companies that were around then, many of those smaller companies are now part of these bigger companies. And what that's doing essentially is consolidating power and control with fewer and fewer and fewer of these companies. There may be differences of opinion, and I say this for a good reason, over what's going to happen to jobs. But companies are already openly replacing white collar workers. I think I mentioned a couple weeks ago that I heard somebody, I think from Verizon, say he sees unemployment reaching 20 to 30% in the next few years. White collar workers, they're replacing them. I just saw that Zuckerberg is doing that with Meta. I think 7,000 white collar workers are being replaced because of AI, automating entire departments, slashing labor costs. People have no concept of what happens to a society when millions of middle class jobs are lost at once. You know, our economy depends upon people spending money. And if they're not spending money, then the system's going to fall. And just wonder if that's not what's at play here, if that's being orchestrated by certain elites that are out there. Capitalism depends on people being able to spend money. If people can't spend money, there's no free market system. Are you with me? Economies, and we know this, are already on thin ice. Eliminating middle class jobs will result in the engine of a society collapse. So you can't have an economy, a fluid, prosperous economy without a prosperous middle class. As we said before, socialists are all about eliminating the middle class. That's what socialism is about. There has to be two groups. You have to have the elites and the lower class that they can control. We have the most debt-ridden economy in history. We've talked about that. We all know about it. With so many people potentially losing their jobs, debt payments are going to fall off. And when people begin defaulting all at once, banks will fail. It's just like a snowball. It's like
That happened back in 2008.
right, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But we had the too big to fail. 90% of companies say they've not seen any impact. I've already talked about that. Think about the Industrial Revolution. It led to many new and high-paying jobs when that started with railroads and oil and everything that happened. And it was a time of prosperity because the technology was such that it provided for more jobs. But with what we're seeing with AI, it's just the opposite. It's taking jobs away as opposed to providing new means of income. And it's going to ultimately, I'm not saying this is going to happen tomorrow or next month or next year or even who knows. But I think it's going to happen gradually over time, little by little by little, which is really the way the enemy works. And we have to understand who's behind this. As the World Economic Forum declared a few years ago, and this is the goal, this is what they're looking for. They don't have it on their website anymore, but it was there for the longest time with this guy with a big smile on his face saying, "You will own nothing and be happy." What's happening comports with the goal of a new world order. So what's even, remember one of the biggest new world order guys was Bush Sr. Bush Sr. was a Trump Sr. George George H.W. Bush. He was in charge of the CIA, which CIA and Operation Mockingbird and everything the CIA's done over the last 100 years or so. And yeah, if you remember, he kept talking about a new world order. So he was one of those, and he was in bed with the Rockefellers and so many of the other elites of the time. Um, this will also lead to a dramatic shift in power. So the elite class who will be able to say what people can and can have and not have. That's when we get to this new world order, which the only thing that's preventing right now a global government is the Trump administration. That's the only thing that's keeping it at bay. Virtually every other country, I think all the countries but maybe seven a couple of years ago were willing to give health authority for all health decisions to the World Health Organization. So we're seeing that. But right now we have a president who is a nationalist. He's not a globalist. But we know he's not going to last forever. I mean, that's the big fear. Um, some are saying that such a scenario, this collapse, economic collapse, which is really what we're talking about, could happen very quickly, very suddenly. It can happen virtually overnight. That's really what happened with the dot-com bubble. It's like all of a sudden, out of nowhere, things began to collapse. And we could see that again. Our entire fiat.
Would be the trigger they're waiting for.
Right. Our entire fiat, which is printed money, that's our system, our financial system's what's called fiat. Our money has no value. A dollar today is worth about 10 cents. But the only reason that we have any wealth in this country is that the Fed keeps printing money. It really has no value. It's all paper. Our entire fiat system depends. And it keeps going as long as there's growth in the economy and, we can keep things under control. Our entire fiat system depends on people working, spending, paying taxes. At a minimum, what this is doing is putting stress by what this overall move toward AI, which could lead to, all these other issues, is putting more stress ultimately on an already stressed economy. And it's just like it can't take too much more. As people stop buying things, you see companies closing or being purchased by larger, more powerful companies which just further consolidates the control. So it's like a snowball effect there too, as people stop being able to purchase and spend money and invest and do whatever they need to do. Banks begin to fail, defaults begin to escalate. And then these once large companies are gobbled up by larger companies. And so that's just consolidating more and more power, which I believe is what the Bible talks about. If we went back 20 years ago when we were in this class, I never would have been able to even contemplate how all this could take place. It wasn't until AI and all the development that's taken place that this could take place. So a new world order is definitely coming. We see central and large commercial banks, and this is where we should just scratch our heads because these people know things and they're keeping it to themselves. And I don't think they're telling us the whole story. And I'm talking about Jamie Dimon and others in that camp because we know central banks and large commercial banks like JP Morgan and HSBC have been buying huge quantities of gold. Why are they doing that? What do they know that we don't? Do they know that the dollar is collapsing or losing its value? In the meantime, the global share of the dollar, which is the reserve currency for them, compared to other currencies, it's still strong, but we're seeing a move away from the dollar. China, as I recall, and don't quote me on this number, but I think it was last year unloaded like $20 billion of our debt. And they're willing to break even or take a loss to do that. First of all, we know why China does it because they want to bring us down. The world appears to be moving away from the dollar as a reserve currency towards something else. Now, nobody really knows what that something else might be. You have the BRICS as one entity, which is they're committed to creating their own central bank currency or their own currency. The people behind this know, and this is the thing. This is why nothing is as it seems. Change is coming. So what they're doing, the J.P. Morgans and the others in the know, are getting ahead of whatever it is that might be coming. They're getting ahead of it. They're being prepared. Students, it was interesting. I read as part of this study that they had certain people speak at commencement ceremonies this year, and people that were getting up and talking about AI, and most of them got booed right off the stage that were doing this. One was the former CEO of Google, and I can't remember what school he was given a commencement speech. They booed him off because these students know that AI, as far as their careers and jobs and futures concerned, is not a good thing. It's going to make it extremely difficult for young college graduates to get jobs. So they know it means less jobs, more surveillance, data centers sucking up aquifers, 49,000 residents, like I said earlier, in Lake Tahoe, losing electricity to power these new data centers. That's already been told. They've been told, I don't know if they have a year or two or whatever, but you're going to lose some of your electricity because we're going to earmark it for these new data centers, which I thought Trump mandated that these companies come up with their own power supplies.
Yeah.
Which is where you get into nano nuclear technology. And I know that I think it's Zuckerberg and some of the data centers he's building is investing in these small nuclear uh, reactors to power. That's could be the next big thing. If AI doesn't pay off, if it doesn't, we're not saying it will or won't, companies could fail, which would result in a domino effect with fewer companies having control. Then you think about how interconnected the world is. It makes us all incredibly vulnerable to collapse. Why is it that we in this country, we've got all this oil? I don't understand it. Why is it we're spending $4.35 a gallon for regular gas? Why is
They made
that?
oil a commodity. It's
Yeah.
all about the rich getting richer.
I mean, why if Trump, and I really have a lot of respect for him, but he comes out and says we're awash in oil, companies are buying oil from us, but our prices are still up there. It's because we're interconnected, and what affects the Arab nations or Europe obviously has an effect on us, and that's above my pay grade to understand.
I think I mentioned before that unfortunately, because of Biden and Obama and whatnot, trying to get us out of getting oil out of the ground in this country, that they had changed their plants to
Process.
yeah, this term I'm looking for though with gasoline and stuff. Anyway, they refineries. They changed refineries to refine this crude from
Venezuela, which is like tar, and we have sweet crude. We can't process that in the amount that, so we're selling that out of the country and then buying in this Venezuelan oil, which is cheaper naturally, and that's what we're getting our oil from. So I know Trump is building another big refinery, and they stopped. There hasn't been a refinery built in this country in over 30
Right.
years. So they have to
And
build the
We've lost
refineries.
refineries, we haven't gained any.
Right.
But
So
still, we
they
have the same number of refineries that we had 6 months ago
Yeah.
when gas
yeah,
was
yeah, but again, because we can't refine
Process
our
our
own
own.
oil.
right.
Right.
So we have to get it
But
on the world market from
right,
Venezuela, wherever, and then process it.
right.
Once we can refine our own oil and use our own natural gas and everything, we are dominant. We have more
Right.
oil and gas
How long
than
is that
any
going to take,
place in the
though?
world.
How long will that take?
I, oh, yeah, yeah,
It's 5 years old.
yeah,
Yeah.
to build
Yeah.
these refineries
By
and
then,
Yeah.
stuff.
somebody else is gonna be in
But
charge.
Trump won't be in office anymore, and if the Democrats take over, they'll shut all of that down.
Yeah.
It'll be
Just like the pipeline to Canada.
Right. We are headed, and there's no question about it. It's happening in Great Britain. It's happening in Europe. It's happening in Australia. I think it's already there in China and India and other places, and it's coming here. We're headed to central bank digital currency. It's coming. There's no stopping it. And then there are companies like Palantir, which has the potential. Palantir is kind of a service company. And if you ever hear about Peter Thiel, he's the leader of Palantir, and just look him up. And he is a globalist. But yet he's got a relationship with the current administration that I don't understand. Having the potential to implement almost a police state becomes becomes far more probable that they'll be able to do that. The infrastructure to implement such a system already exists. It's like we've said before. You could uh, the beast, the Antichrist came on the scene. The technology he would need to control all buying and selling is already there. It's just a question of plugging it in. What's just to conclude? The last slide. All of this is leading to the beast system. Why do we need? I mentioned this at the very beginning. 3,000 new data centers. Now, maybe there's a scientific technical need, but what a drain that is on our grid. What a drain it is on our water supplies, to say nothing of the cost. These companies, and I know that when uh, President Trump, day two of his administration, brought all these leaders together and they committed 500 billion for building the infrastructure for AI. Is history repeating itself? Can we go back to COVID? I believe that COVID was manufactured, it was implemented, and then the solution, kind of like the Hegelian dialect. Hegelian dialect is create a crisis, present a solution which is generally worse than the correct crisis, and then control it. And that's kind of what we saw there was the solution to the problem was far worse than the problem, if you think about it. The game plan, and this is where it gets into the conspiracy part of this, but the game plan has been in place for a very long time. You talk about one world government and so forth. You go back to the Club of Rome in 1970 and earlier than that, the Rockefellers and the Dulles brothers and all of these people throughout history, at least for the last 7,500 years, this has been their strategy all along to create a one world system. They can so easily gain control. This is the thing. And we see all these things potentially. It's like, you put enough weight on a horse. You keep adding and adding and adding to it. As strong as that horse is, sooner or later it's going to collapse under the weight. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing here. We're close to this. We were close to what the outcome would be prior to the 2024 election. Let's face it. But Trump has clearly been a thorn in their side. No question. Everybody says it. Everybody knows it. That's why the left hates him. He's getting in their way. And so forth. Then there's been a break in the action, and we need to pray that this break continues, that someone will come along and replace Trump, who is as strong as he is, and so forth. Then it's hard to imagine, very last point here, that things are ever going to get better because we even have Republicans like Elise Stefanik, who I have a ton of respect for. She was going to run for governor in New York, but she backed off. And she's a hardcore mega loyalist. She's teaming up with a Democrat to introduce a federal digital ID. So it's not just the left and the Democrats. It's it's all over the place. So this stuff is going to happen. And if you think about how it all ties into the Bible prophecy, one world system, control of buying and selling, financial collapse, the four horsemen of the on and on and on. It's all pointing to that. Again, we don't know if all this stuff is going to culminate tomorrow or next week or next month or 10 years from now. But what we're seeing is a move in the direction to what the Bible says is going to happen. And the other thing I'll end with is we know the outcome. We know who wins. It's interesting that I was thinking about another study and looking back at this whole thing with UFOs and stuff, just as an aside. And the supernatural, what happens in the supernatural world with UFOs and all these other things, there's nothing new. It's been going on. You go back to Genesis 7 and 8, when Pharaoh's magicians were able to throw the staff down and turn it into a snake and then do some other things, only up to a certain point. And then they couldn't go any further, whereas Moses and Aaron could do all of the things, bring on all the plagues. That supernatural stuff's always been with us. Nothing new, like we read in Ecclesiastes, nothing new under the sun.
Just repackaged.
Yeah, it's just repackaged. It's like with the Nephilim we've talked about, and Paul warns about things. Let me just finish if I can remember where I put it. Yeah, I'll get to it next week because I'm running out of time. But there's a scripture that
Show's gonna explode in 2 seconds.
yeah, yeah, that's my problem.
Actually, she's gonna start sitting next to the light switch.
What is it? If I can find that scripture. Um, it's in Luke somewhere. It's a scripture I wanted to. Oh, I know where it is. Yeah. Oh, I'll find it next week. I know I've got it here somewhere. No, at any rate, it's neither here nor there. So, questions, comments?
Question. And I want opinion too. Like when I left Cigna last year, one of the leaders was saying AI is like a hardworking intern. It'll work 24/7. It'll tell you what to do, and it'll do it for over and over and over again. And I saw it as making our jobs easier by taking meeting notes for us. And I know doctors can do that now too, where you can just record the voice and it'll take the meeting notes for you. And anyway, so, and I want to use the analogy of, when traffic lights came in, a lot of people lost their jobs because, um, all the people directing traffic, traffic lights. So I'm being a little contrarian, but I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying, I'm just wondering, it doesn't feel like we're there yet, but I think what you're saying is a few years down the road, as this evolves, then we're in trouble. I may be wrong, so I just wanted to see what John, you would think.
I think it's coming a lot faster than most people think. A lot faster.
Okay.
Well, I will tell you that at the graduation we were at, top graduates, the top 10 in the school and stuff, they're going into fields that I couldn't even pronounce what they were going to, not that I knew what they were going to do, but obviously it's all in this AI, this ultra, I mean, so yeah, I mean, it's going to be
Well,
like
it's multiplying. It used to be, yearly, whatever. Now it's almost daily that things are multiplying into change and advancement.
What do we say here that AI knowledge doubles every 8 months?
I heard 4 months, but
4 months?
that number changes every time you ask it.
Yeah. So imagine what's going to be like a year from now.
Yeah,
Wow.
Bob,